Florida Gator, an NFL wide receiver, and a guy you see in studio all the time on the SEC Network during football season. CD, had fun working with you this past weekend. What's up, my man?
Hey, I tell you what, man, it was a lot of fun being there with the mayor of Oxford, and you and I have had a chance to be on each other's shows a lot over the years, but to hang there with you, to be able to cover a team that I have a lot of respect for in a place that is one of my favorite places to visit in the country, man. It was a great weekend.
Chris, what did you take away from the Ole Miss spring game? Because when you go into these games, I think we talked about this on Saturday, you got different coaches, different programs who are looking for different results or outcomes or trying to see different things. And so sometimes it's hard to really pull, okay, I can take this away as something real. When you sort through it all, what was that for Ole Miss?
Well, I think the first thing was that, the quarterback room is as advertised. And, I know a lot of the folks within the program, specifically those three quarterbacks that are in the battle for the starting job, have all said that it's the most talented room in the country, most talented quarterback room in the country. I would agree with that. And I was surprised by a couple things. One, after hearing how far Jackson Dart had come from where he was last year to where he is this year, both in terms of understanding the offense and executing the offense and becoming a leader, that was apparent to me. I did not think that was necessarily going to be the case when I started, looking at this game leading up to Saturday. And then Spencer Sanders, a guy that, when you and I spoke to the coaches, had largely not participated much in the first 14 practices. For him to be not only as effective, but just utilized as much as he was coming off that shoulder injury that had limited him for much of the spring was surprising to me. And I think, watching Walker Howard do what he was able to do with such a limited amount of reps at the college level, limited amount of reps in this offense, really spoke to me about how good this group is. I don't know how long they'll be able to hold on to all three of them, but I think that was my biggest takeaway, was just how good that quarterback room is. In a conference and in the country where there is a dearth of real quarterback talent, for them to have three guys that's that good is saying something about Lane Kiffin and that coaching staff to be able to attract that type of talent to the roster.
So I think you and I both look at the quarterback situation. You're like, it doesn't make sense for all three of these guys to be here. I mean, it appears as if Jackson Dart is the starter. It appears as if Walker Howard was kind of led to believe that he was going to be the backup. And so it's like, what do you do with Spencer Sanders? But Sanders can't transfer within the SEC. So, I mean, the person that would be like, oh, he should go to Florida because Florida needs a quarterback. I'm not picking on your Gators. He can't do that without sitting out, and he's already used the free transfer. So where does he go?
Yeah. Maybe there's a way to utilize both of them. I don't know what that conversation is like. I do know that there's a unique skill set that Spencer Sanders has that can certainly be an asset to what Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. are trying to do offensively. I would imagine that's what I think was so weird about the decision that he made to go to Oxford, was that we figured this guy has started for parts of 4 years at Oklahoma State, has 1 year of eligibility remaining. He's got to go somewhere where he's virtually guaranteed the starting job. But that clearly hasn't been the case or the directive from the top down. So I don't know if you can keep him. I guess maybe the fact that he came from outside of the SEC indicates that maybe he's not completely tied to the conference if it doesn't work out here. But I would love to find a way to be able to utilize both of those guys, or in parts all three of those guys. The old saying, if you don't have if you got two quarterbacks, you don't have one quarterback. Well, I don't think that is applicable in today's college football. With as much as the quarterback is asked to run and do things that weren't being done 15, 20 years ago, I think there is a place for being able to use two different guys that have complementary skill sets.
And doesn't your college career kind of point to that not necessarily always being the case? I mean, there was a time there where the head ball coach was shuffling Terry Dean and Danny Werfel, and both guys were pretty good.
Yeah, that was definitely my experience at Florida up until probably my senior year, when Danny took the job and ran with it for my senior year and his senior year the next year where he won the Heisman. Even after that, remember Jesse Palmer, Doug Johnson, Noah Brandeis, those guys, all spent some time rotating through there as well. So Coach Spurrier always talked about the quarterback position being just like every other spot where if you're not performing up to what the expectation level is, then you use the next guy and give him a chance. And I think whoever wins that job is going to be able to run this offense really well, but I still think that there's a piece that one or the other can bring to help make the offense even more dynamic.
So you saw 3 spring games in, I guess, 8 days. So let's go reverse order. Let's rewind. Thursday night before you did the Ole Miss spring game, you had the Florida spring game. Lane Kiffin had some fun with that on Twitter. What's Florida going to do at quarterback?
I honestly believe, just like after being around the coaches in Oxford, that there is an idea of who the quarterback's going to be. I think Jackson Dart's going to be the starter, at least in the beginning, and I think in Gainesville it's going to be Graham Mertz. And listening to the way the coaches talk about Graham Mertz, his experience as a starter in college football, having 32 starts under his belt, the football IQ that he has, the leadership, the commitment to getting up to speed, I really believe that it's going to be Graham Mertz. Now, the setup of the game on Thursday night was not conducive to offensive success or quarterback success specifically. A lot of blitzing from Austin Armstrong's defenses, and Florida had a hard time picking those things up, thus the 10-7 final score. But, I do think that as of right now, this has not come out publicly yet, but there will be a quarterback addition coming up to Florida's roster, so I don't know how that plays into the competition. But if I had to place a wager on who I think is going to be the starting quarterback when Florida heads to Salt Lake City for their opener against Utah, I would say Graham Mertz.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, and I don't know. I know they're kind of reformulating the collective at Florida. We talked with Andy Staples some about that last week. Did they throw everything they've got at Malik Murphy at Texas and say, hey, Quinn Ewers is going to be the starter, and you're not getting past Arch Manning? Come start at Florida.
I don't know any of the details. Well, I know some details, and I don't necessarily have the ability to comment necessarily. I mean, I think
is that a guy that would make sense at Florida? How about that?
I mean, I think potentially. I will say this, though. The quarterbacks that I talked to, the coaches that I talked to as it related to the quarterbacks, they all felt like of all the guys that were in the portal, that Graham Mertz was the best available in terms of their evaluation, in terms of the potential fit. So I probably doubt that they would go out and get him, but I do think there's something to be said. I think you're going to ask me next about Auburn and Hugh Freeze. Every coach that we talked to this past 8 days, whether it was you and I and talking with Lane or Billy Napier or Hugh Freeze, all are planning to be active in the transfer portal. All are planning to out-recruit whatever they have on the roster right now. And I think that's the dynamic of college football. It's what can I do to upgrade? It's the pasture being greener on the other side of the fence in a lot of cases. And I think, as weird as that is for us to think about, I also think it creates a sense of urgency that hasn't been there for existing players, knowing that there is the ability to go out and make you replaceable.
Hey, we've only got a minute left. We've got hard time breaks. Can't get around those. But I'm curious about your thoughts on Auburn, with what you saw, your conversations with Hugh Freeze, and what you saw on the field. I know it was weird because of weather and a kind of a shortened practice time, but is there reason to be hopeful about Auburn this year?
I don't think they're going to be very good this year. I do think they are going to be extremely dangerous in the next 2 to 3 years. The talent is not where Hugh Freeze needs it to be. He made kind of a tail of the tape comparison between what he inherited in Oxford when he was the head coach there in year number 1 and where he's at now in Auburn. I don't think it's nearly as good as what it was there in Ole Miss, but I think he's surprised by that a little bit. But I do think he's going to make that thing competitive in the West coming up here in the next 2 to 3 years.
Chris, great insight. Enjoyed it this past weekend, and look forward to staying in touch. We'll talk to you soon.